Okay.
Now it's recording.
Brendan lost service and he asked that question, so
Well,
I guess we'll at least capture what he misses.
Yeah, I don't think we miss a whole lot. I turned the recording portion of it on. So as far as this group, the main things, and I'd like to recognize Jimmy for working with me to get a lot of this going. Our main stated purpose is to increase affinity and engagement. Affinity just means the way that you feel about the institution, the way that you feel about your experience when you were here. And then engagement, we want to keep you and then the people that are in your sphere of influence engaged regarding what is happening with the program, what are the opportunities for you to come back and to interact with one another. Those are our primary goals. I think a lot of times when you guys hear an alumni group, something like that, that you feel like there's a lot of pressure where we're only interested in your money. More specifically, I would like to say that I'm interested in you guys in the same way when we were recruiting you back in the day. I want you to continue to be around the program. We want to build out networking opportunities for the student athletes that we have on the team. We want to continue to maximize, build out networking opportunities for those of you that are currently here. One of the great things that we did 2 years ago, I think, is Johanna, Kim, Milan, and who was the other person that was with us?
Celia.
And Celia. We had dinner one night in London. It was just a great opportunity to get together and talk and catch up and see where everybody was. We picked up the bill. That's an example of one of the things that we want to do, which is why I've kind of structured things as I have, because there's definitely going to be a dichotomy between those of you that are abroad and those of you that are domestic in the United States, and opportunities to continue to stay engaged and connected with the program. So that being said, what am I asking of you guys? The way that most of these committees or groups work is that you've got a president that kind of is a little bit more actively engaged, that would be a point person that would work with me. You've got a VP who's paying attention to what the president is doing, being prepared that in maybe 2 years they'll fulfill that role and continue to move things forward. And then you've typically got a secretary who just helps keep notes, keep things organized, someone who doesn't necessarily want to drive the program forward, but wants to be engaged in what's going on there. And then also we've got, an international group and a domestic group. And then the other thing that I'm also trying to do, we've got Harris Hellberg, who's on the call right here. He's also going to be one of the groups from the student athlete board that we're going to put together that is going to prepare student athletes to understand what the alumni group does, so that when they leave, they already are integrated and have a sense of connection to what's happening with that group. So are there any questions about what our stated goals are and what the positions are and how they would function? Okay, the most difficult thing for me is usually just staying connected with you guys, because you get different jobs so frequently. There are now so many of you. Being able to maintain our LinkedIn group has been a good way for me to prompt people and let people know about what's going on. Haven't been able to glean out everyone's best email address, but at least this way, if I push it to LinkedIn, it pushes it to your email and you get some notifications about that. Thank you guys for giving me your contact info, and I'm going to try to stay engaged with you guys as much as possible and continue to send you out information that is pertinent to your experience around this. Any other questions about any of that?
I think it's really good to have like a communal platform to stay connected. And I don't use LinkedIn a lot, but at least I check it occasionally. But I know that some people aren't on LinkedIn at all. So is there going to be some kind of maybe email list so we can really like track down the people who don't use LinkedIn and get them involved?
Yeah, and that's a great question. Like, I have a lot of people's contact info, and I've been trying to encourage them to either be a part of it, or at least connect with me, or let me know what is a good way to be in contact with them. And I would say at this point, we've increased the number of people that have utilized it by quite a bit, but we just continue to do that. And that also, I think, is on you guys a little bit to continue to contact with your sphere of influence or the people that you know that are in your group to let them know what the opportunities are, or if we can get email address info, I'll take that any day of the week. And maybe we'll just create a form where people can just submit contact info as they want. A lot of people don't want to send in their contact information because they don't want to feel that there's an obligation that they're going to get this phone call every year asking them for money.
At 9 o'clock at night?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that most people are concerned about with that. But so that's why we want to start building some trust where we have some opportunities for people to engage before there's any ever ask for support. But yeah, that's a great question. There's also, of course, Facebook. We can stay connected with that, but people are less and less using that. We've got our platforms on Instagram. You guys are probably more up to date on what you guys use, but as I go on, I see Facebook less and less and less as a means to network and connect with people.
So,
Other questions? Go ahead, Cal.
So outside of this alumni group that's on this call and the people in the group message, are you still trying to build that base of former athletes that aren't directly involved with this? Like, so like if we do a networking event, we're still trying to encompass them, correct?
Yeah, we're trying to engage as many people that have been a part of the program. You guys are the people that I probably have the most interaction with. And I've also tried to pick people that are from different event groups, that are from slightly broader pieces of the last 10 years, not everybody from one slice or one group. And I'm going to lean on you guys a little bit to help disseminate that information to, again, the people that, as I described, your sphere of influence. So we've got some throwers. Hopefully they would send it out to all their thrower friends that they ever had interaction with. We've got some distance people that would go out to some of those people through them. My hope is that my connection with you guys will help us stay connected to those groups and send people information about how they can be a part of things. But I've also got like a master email list. I've also got our master LinkedIn contact list that I can push that to those groups pretty easily. So we'll try to send out notes from like these calls once we have a secretary, just kind of let people know what this group is doing. Other questions? One of the things that we talked about that I think that there's interest is in gear that alumni can wear that are specifically branded for Queens. There's some of those opportunities. I know, Todd, they've got a bunch of stuff in the link in the bookstore, correct?
Yeah, they do. We also have the online store through the Queens Athletics website.
And does the funding go back to the track program, or is that athletics in general?
That's a little tricky. We don't really make a lot of money off that. If it's through the bookstore, it goes back to the bookstore. We don't get anything. I would say that if it's through the Queens Athletics website, we do get a percentage of it. It's a very small percentage, and that does get directed back to the track program.
Are there specific items that you guys are interested in that would be difficult or very specialty items to like track and field? They don't have access to, or that you'd like access to? Watches? You mean like an actual watch, Asia, like you would use at a track meet?
Asia.
Yeah, I don't know, just a watch.
Oh, it wasn't muted. Yeah, I mentioned it before. I don't know if it's available in the stores, but like the actual pennies that we had, the white ones that Chris designed, with the 3 blue bars, I think those are quite nice. I wouldn't mind having one of those, but
We got an extra one of those laying around.
there you go. If it's an XXL, then I'm in luck.
Yeah, if you just stay up with me, Quinn, I'll get you that.
Good. Thank you.
No, one thing, Jim, I know you and I discussed it a while back. Do you guys still do the supplemental orders?
Yep. Yep, we do that once a year, and that's got more so athletic apparel and stuff like that. But we throw a polo in there that kids can get for their parents and stuff like that.
So one thing that I don't know, I think I discussed it with you or Vince, but when you guys do that supplemental order, potentially putting out a list for the alumni, and you have that markup, and that margin goes back to you guys directly. And because, I mean, if you mark it up $25, I mean, we're still getting a good deal on it, essentially. Most of us are in a position where we can afford that extra $25. And then we're not directly donating back. Like, we're not just writing a check for you guys, but we're still getting something out of it.
Yep, and we'll explore a lot of that as we kind of move forward.
So
Yeah,
I remember.
I agree with that.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, you guys go ahead. No, I'll go last.
I was just going to say it's kind of related, but in terms of donations, just because you touched on it, a few years ago, I know that they were funding for specific things in the program, like the records board or something else. So I'm wondering if the program has something that they need or that they have in mind that they're really funding towards now, that they're going to be like either fundraising or putting out a specific email newsletter or wanted list, so to speak.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Truck Stadium, Quinn.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's part of it. Quinn, one of the things that we've been trying to do is there's a move towards establishing a facility, right? And that's not anything that any asks have gone out towards alumni. But what we have been doing, and Todd and I have discussed at length, is more establishing a endowment. And Todd, can you tell the rest of us what the benchmark is to establish that, the dollar amount?
Yeah, so just so everybody understands, in case you don't have a background on it, endowment means that there's a chunk of money in there, and based on the earnings, we're allowed to spin off or take out 4% roughly every year, 4 to 5%. So the main chunk of that money doesn't really ever get touched, and it continues to grow. So the annual amount that you get to take out hopefully gets bigger and bigger. At Queens, the minimum to establish an endowment is $30,000, and that doesn't have to be from one person.
Can you bring the fan in here?
It can be from a lot of different things. Jim and I have talked about different ways that we can do that for track, but really that gives it some level of stability as far as you can count on that money every year. Now, it does have to be pretty big for it to make a significant impact budget-wise, but getting there, I think, is the first step. So
one of the things that, and I'll just piggyback on top of that, I've been having discussions with kids that are finance majors that are leaving about creating that. So right now, we've got a finite budget that comes from the institution. We spend anywhere from 30 to 60% in excess of what we're allocated every single year. So we've got a $102,000 budget. And typically we spend about $165,000 a year. So that leaves us a gap of either money that we get reimbursed from the NCAA or money that we turn from running our home track meets, which I think last year we grossed around $45,000 from doing that. All of those things cover that gap. Okay, and then the other piece too is the outlay that we have from the institution in regards to what my salary is, what the salary for the distance guy is, the salary for the throws guy, and then the 2 part-times, and then I typically fund another part-time out of that money as well, is set. The institution is, for example, if we've got Quinn Ryder is on our staff and he's doing a killer job coaching our 100, 200 meter kids. And if I go to my boss and I say, is there any way he needs $4,000 more to keep him here? We don't have the ability to do that. What my vision is, and Todd can correct me if this is even possible, is that we build out either 1 or 2 different endowments, whether one is for budgetary support and the other is for salary support every single year. And I'm not sure what that all looks like as far as the rules, but because we're a private institution, we make our own rules. We could establish some of those different pieces. Now, over the last couple of years, Quinn, you gave us some money for the establishment of a record board. I still have that money. It's still in our fundraising account. Every time I ask that question, it typically turns into equitable access. If you guys have got a record board, swimming's got to have a record board. Men's basketball's got to have a record board. Men's volleyball's got to have a record board. Doesn't make any sense to me, but that's where we're at. So someday when we build a track, the record board will go out there. Villa's already decided. I think you've seen that. Go ahead, guys.
What's funny about that is when I donated, the portal link that you provided me was specifically for track and field.
Yep.
So I find it pretty interesting that I mean, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but do you have the final decision-making, power to decide that money that has been allocated to track and field by an alumni of the track and field team to a specific purpose for track and field can then be overruled by somebody else within the administration?
100%. Like unless you give it in a way where there's a Todd, I don't know.
I give you the board itself.
It's like a contract, right? Where you sign it, says this can only be utilized for track spikes. I'm going to give you $10,000 for the spikes that go into track shoes. Yeah, then it kind of is in a big discretionary pot.
I see. Okay.
Because I'm still here, like right now, Quinn, we've got I think I got $60,000 built up in that account.
Yep.
And so that comes from alumni giving, that comes from home meets that we run. All of that stuff goes into the same pot. So you kind of just have to operate under the auspices that my word is good enough that we're going to end up with the Quinn Ryder alumni board that's going to have all your records up there. I think Townsend told me he would only give to it as long as his name was still going to be on it. And so far, that's true. Townsend is still our school record holder in the steeple.
All right, I understand. So moving forward, if we were to do that with an endowment, would it operate in the same way?
No, endowments are usually constructed where there are specific rules about how the money that's generated by the fund can be allocated or used. And I think at the establishment of that account, you kind of create that. Am I right, Todd?
Yeah, so an endowment is created not just with the money, but it's called an MOU. We draft it up and say this is what the money can be spent for, things like that. For the good thing about that is that with programmatic funds, if it's just to support the program, even salaries, all of that kind of falls under the same bucket. So if it's, hey, we really need to take an extra trip this year, or we need to pay a bonus for a coach, all of that can still come out of the same endowment bucket if it's designated for programmatic funds.
And that's MOU, like Memorandum of Understanding.
Yep.
For basically articles of incorporation that you'd have for any kind of company.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with your donation, Quinn, if we had written that up at the time of your donation, specifically for the record board, things like that, then that money would absolutely only be used for that. I will say that we always try to do donor intent, meaning your intent was to build a record board. I will say that we're still working on that internally as an athletic department, not just for track, but for everybody. But also saying your intent was to use that money. We want to still be able to do that if at all possible.
Okay. Yeah, no, understood. I'm just trying to get a better idea of how that works moving forward. Makes sense.
I still have your $5 in my office, or $10 too, Quinn.
Mine?
Yeah.
If it's from college, it was definitely not mine.
No, you sent me a physical letter and taped $10 on it and sent me a note about your intent to continue to give back to the program. And I've learned you can't photocopy money, though. Apparently, I tried to make a photocopy. Gives me a blank page, which I didn't think
send it in,
they built that.
I'll send it in yen next time, or euros or something.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Sounds good, though.
Yeah. Well, there was something that you said that I wanted to. Oh, so to give you an idea, most of you guys remember Sahai Bainey, who was part of the program. When she was part of the program originally, her salary every single year was $30,000. Through the cost of living increases, At the very end, the 5th year that she worked with us, she made $31,532, something like that. So she got $1,500 more over 5 years, which if all of you are thinking about where you're at in your professional lives, hopefully in 5 years you make more than $1,500 more than what you do right now. In contrast, the current distance coach, between fundraised dollars that I've been able to put together and putting him in a position where he's ultimately responsible for running our home meets, he makes $45,000. Okay, so you can see that you can probably keep somebody a lot longer with $45,000, $50,000 a year than you can with $30,000. $30,000 is generally just an entry-level job in our industry. Our throws coach originally was part-time when we had Coach Morris, and she made $8,000 a year when she originally started. Half a year in, we got that position to $30,000 a year. And then with some other stuff this last year, it paid $35,000 a year. So those are ways, that's how I'm utilizing some of the fundraised dollars that we're creating. Zero of it has ever gone back into my pocket. Like I can't increase my salary. I can't give myself a bonus out of that, but I have been utilizing that in a discretionary sense to increase how much the people that are associated with the program that support it each year. On top of that, we had like a volunteer assistant this year that I gave him $6,000 to just stick around and to offset his costs. So he was part of the group, and every single year we're always trying to add one more person that's part of that group. And sometimes it's 2 people that we fundraise and throw another $6,000 per person in there, and typically we can give them like tuition remission or some of those other different pieces. But that's where most of that money is gone, and then also to cover the extra $30,000 that we just spend in budgetary outlay each year. And to give you some context within budgetary outlay, within the region, no one spends more money in a budgetary outlay on track and field than us. So we spend 160. The next one, I think, usually has been Mount Olive at like 123, because they publish these numbers every single year. And then you've got, I think Wingate was around 112. But really, there seems to be a very straight line correlation between budgetary outlay and success at the NCAA level with those different programs. If you look at the very top tier of Division II, which has been West Texas A&M, and part of that is a geographic necessity. The year that I pulled it, they spent $298,000 from a budgetary outlay standpoint. So that's just a bunch of context to help you guys out and help you understand what we're thinking about. If we get to the point where we do have a home facility, we'll run a bunch of other meets, and that will probably net us somewhere between $30,000 to $60,000 a year, with our ability to not only run the meets, but save the money that we would otherwise spend to go to meets similar at that time. Any other questions in regards to that, Quinn? You've been driving most of them.
No, very clear. Thank you. Makes perfect sense.
I do have a question. How important is like staff retainment to culture or success in the program?
You haven't really worked at a business, but when you work at a business and you have somebody with 5 years of experience and you have somebody with 0 years of experience, the guy with 5 years of experience knows the nuances, the ins and outs of the institution, how to do paperwork. They don't screw things up. They know what type of kid that we're looking for specifically. And if we're funding things at a baseline level, such a pain to onboard a new person every single year, teach them the process, and then have them leave. For example, like we've had 3 different throws coaches in the last 3 years. It's a huge pain, and it makes it difficult. And then I think also too, familiarity, and you guys know, working with different coaches throughout your life, if you had 3 or 4 different coaches from year to year to year, it's kind of difficult to learn the language and understand what they're trying to get you to do, and then be able to work with them and have success. So I think it's important, and that's why I've made it one of the priorities for us so far.
How many previous athletes are you keeping on as grad assistants?
Usually it's just how people are interested. Right now we've got two that are previous athletes that are a member of the staff. The person next year went to the University of Iowa, and Samford University in Birmingham. So they're people, typically what we want are people that are interested in going into the industry and learning what we do. So we get people from all over, but occasionally we do get people that have expressed interest internally. And I really like those people because they already know the institution. They know our limitations. They know our opportunities. And they do a really, really great job with things.
Okay. Hey everyone, hey Coach V. I have a question in regards, just going back to the facilities question one more time. So I know you said that there's a drive to, for, us to have a track, for us to have our own home facility. But in terms of budgeting or, picking out land, has any steps been taken towards that?
So we currently have the land. It's the area actually where you threw, not the last year, but the first year that you would have thrown, we have that asphalt track. That area be completely repurposed where we would have a regular track, and then on the back side of it would have a long throw area that would include a spot where we have 2 to 3 shot put rings, a discus ring and a hammer ring in the same cage, and then next to that would be a javelin runway right next to it. So there's a very robust plan that's been established, and until you've gone through that process, it takes a long time to have those conversations just to establish what you're fundraising for, how much it's actually going to cost, and where it comes out.
I lost you.
And I can tell you this, Kyle, they actually put out earlier this year an ask for the total dollar amount that would cover the construction of that entire facility. Now, the fact that we're going through this COVID nonsense crisis, I think, is going to slow some of that momentum down and potentially changes what donors are thinking. I assume if you had 20 million in the market and the market went down 50%, you got 10 million in the market. So you may be less charitable in that moment, but they've certainly gone forward and started to ask people that have the means to put together some of that. And I think the price tag, if I remember correctly, was somewhere around $7 to $8 million for the total construction of the facility. And I may be a little off by $1 or $2 million, but I know that an ask of that level was already done. So there's an effort to kind of move forward in that direction.
Okay. Okay.
To piggyback on that too, they've already started some equipment purchases and facility infrastructure. So they added runways for long jump, pole vault. They've got a high jump apron now. They got pits for both pole vault and high jump. So they're slowly getting to the direction we're all hoping for at one point.
Okay, nice. All right. Thanks for the info, guys.
Do you have any insight on this stuff as well, or?
Did you ask me or Todd?
Todd.
I don't think I have anything more to add than what Jim's already said. There has been asks made. We're building that into our facilities master plan. I would say that is one of our top priorities. That's one of the president's priorities, is to get that done. Now, when that timeline is, it's hard to say, especially with what's going on. As Jim mentioned, it not only changes financial outlooks, but it changes priorities with the pandemic going on. So right now, a lot of our fundraising, truthfully, is going to our student assistance fund, and to make sure we're solvent, we have enough money to do what we need to do in the fall. And that's university-wide, not just track.
I think an important thing to acknowledge, too, is that the priorities from an advancement standpoint have changed from Pamela Davies to President Lugo. It was always acknowledged to me by people, whether that's Sherry as the athletic director, James as the VP of advancement, that it was never Pamela Davies' intent to fundraise and put together the money to build a track. That was just never. There were other priorities before that, whether that was the new dorm that they just built the last year, whether it was the repurposing of the old science building into the new communications building. You can remember that they built Rogers, they built the Levine, they built Byram or South in the new parking deck. There was a lot of things that were done. They just completely gutted and redid the Fine Arts building. That was, I can remember the day that James went to make that $12 million ask. He said, "Oh, I'm flying up to New York today to make a $12 million ask." There were about, I want to say 4 or 5 years from that ask to the completion of the actual construction. So that's typically how that looks. You don't walk into a room and say, "Todd, we got a great project. We'd like to know if you could pitch us $8 million for that." And Todd says, "Sure. Let's get together later this afternoon and get that done." It's more of a process where you're building relationships and painting a picture and figuring out whatever the other constituent is and what their needs are and what their desires are, and marrying those up with what their desire to give money is. So it's not a simple, it's a very convoluted process. It takes a lot of time, but something that we're working on. I will say this, the drawings that I've seen are awesome. If we ever get to that point where we have a facility like that, we may pivot a little bit with the construction of our team. The reason that our team is built the way that it is just been on access to facilities. Earlier this year, we got kicked out of Myers Park for a full semester, and we did everything on the soccer field with the sprints jump crew for a full semester, which that was a little taxing, but we're kind of back into Myers Park, and now we're at a place where if you were ever a pole vaulter or you were a jumper and you know what it's like in the spring when you're trying to get into Myers Park, you may get in there one day. We now have the ability to execute those practices at our own facility anytime that we want. The other thing that's super important about having those facilities is it allows us to create an additional revenue stream for the people that are part-time to be able to fund what they do. So one of the things that we're looking at is Vince, who was a multi-first, some of you may know him, is going to have the opportunity to coach pole vault 2 nights a week. And if he's charging a kid $20 per session, that may be something that bridges the gap where he can pay his rent and live a little bit better than ramen and cheap boneless, skinless chicken from Harris Teeter. So those are different things that we want to try to do to build out those various revenue streams. Because when we do camps, and 2 years ago, we did $5,000 in total revenue from camps. That goes to support salaries for the other assistants that are on the team. So let's keep moving forward. We'll talk about events, and Jimmy, you can talk a little bit about this. We've had some conversations. I'll let you go through it. We've got cross-country track meet, other sporting events, bowling, alumni connection dinner, and golf outing. You can kind of talk to the rest of the group about what we've discussed.
Yeah, so I mean, really just want to gauge everybody's interest and find out, what's feasible. Kind of, we have a lot of people that are all over the place. We, like to find out who's local to Charlotte or who can make it down to Charlotte for maybe a cross-country meet, or Jim had mentioned going to a basketball game and having a room upstairs where we all kind of have some, food and drinks and hang out for a day. But, it'd be great if we can find some times throughout the year where everybody can meet up and we can, do this in a more personal setting. And then maybe, everybody comes and spends $10, $15, however much on just a meal or a small donation. And that can be part of the fundraising and starting a tradition out of that. And we can all start to build on that. Down the road, maybe it takes a little bit more planning, but if we can generate enough interest in doing something like a golf outing or a bowling fundraiser, that would be a lot of fun, but it would require some planning and some commitments up front and get enough people on board so that we can reserve the space and plan accordingly. But, I don't know if there's other people that are interested in that and how many people that we have that would be able to come to Charlotte. And then even for some of the people that are international, if you're in, Germany or Amsterdam, or maybe having some of the people that some of the alumni that are local to you and organizing a group event on your side, and then who knows, how many people we have that would be interested, and we can just kind of keep track and maybe make it more of a ritual, or not, just more consistent event where we keep up with each other.
Any thoughts or questions?
Yeah, so definitely when I saw the alumni events, one thing that I definitely thought about was, maybe like graduation week, or like the week immediately after conference or something, we could have a huge alumni event where we're welcoming specifically graduating seniors, into the alumni board and things like that. So that way they can network with us. At that point, I mean, I'd hope that they'd have a job, but either way they can still network with us and get into their industries and things like that, and have more connections that way. So it could be like a huge, big alumni event where, we just attract everyone that did track and field at Queens, everyone who's graduating, and, we all get acquainted. So, I mean, like, yeah, the golf event and everything. But I guess that would be like an immediate welcome upon graduation,
Yeah. It's a great idea.
Yeah, and I'm putting that in the notes just so you guys know. If I'm pounding away on the keyboard, I'm not sending out emails. I'm just taking down your ideas.
Yeah, I actually really like that. A common sentiment that I kind of see across the board is that a lot of the former athletes have affinity for Queens track and not so much Queens. And I don't know where that comes from really. But but I would say that if we make it Queens track specifically, then that would generate a lot more interest.
Here's from an athlete standpoint, like what events would you guys be interested in? Like where the alumni join and potentially some type of networking atmosphere.
Yeah, I think it's more about just like creating a consistent like time where we all meet up and do something. From what I've seen, there's not really any schedule or like reoccurring event that happens. But I think graduation week is a great week because then you can kind of like talk to all the graduating seniors, or I really think it could be anything. It could be golf. It could be, I don't think that it specifically like has to do with anything, as long as we have like a consistent, time where we all like make it a tradition almost, just to like, hey, after outdoor conference every year, the alumni come and do X and talk to the athletes about conference and, reminisce on their experience and etc. So
just having that consistency. So something
yeah.
okay, the week before or the week after conference, we're going to have this event. The alumni are usually involved with it, stuff like that.
Yeah, so it could even be something as simple as like a banquet, like you celebrate hopefully like the accomplishments of the outdoor conference or nationals, and then the alumni also come in and are able to celebrate with the team and also like reminisce on their experience, or then go out for a drink afterwards, or something like that. Because what I do see is a lot of inconsistency just coming from alumni interacting with the actual team, and the team kind of sees that too, like, oh, everyone's scattered across the globe, and it seems like everyone has their pocket of friends or pocket of teammates that they enjoyed competing with, but there isn't any central like get together.
That's kind of, so if I can, so I did my master's in the UK, and I joined the track team at that university, and they have like a really active alumni scene. And things that they do is like, well, they don't have a conference meet, but like an equivalent. So all alumni, like if there's one day you come back, you come for that meet. And then people socialize there, and like it's really easy to get, well, obviously they have a bit of a longer history, so you end up talking to people you really see all ages. You see people who've graduated last year, or people who've graduated like 50 years ago.
Right.
And it's quite fun. So they've got like a little tent with, I don't know, some bougie like champagne and strawberries or something. And then like, yeah, but it's like a really active scene. And then after the meet, there's a big sort of banquety thing. They actually had a proper ball last year because it was like the 100th anniversary. So quite fancy, but you can, make it as fancier or not as you want. I think that's quite cool. And then, there's like a proper culture. And then they have, because lots of people are in London, so they've got like London drinks every once in a while for people who can make it. But it's really, there's a couple like fixtures that people just know will be happening, except for this year. But it's like, it's because of COVID, but it's always, you can be sure like at that event, it's kind of safe to come back. It's like a homecoming. So that's quite cool.
I think that's quite cool what Johanna mentioned, but one way, and that's a little bit goes to Harris's point, is, well, we are so scattered across the globe, right? But we have such a cool team, and we have people from such different backgrounds and working and having experienced so many different things. I think one way that we could already bring the group closer is you guys have team meetings, right? And be that before a meet or be that on a monthly basis or so, maybe bring in an alumni speaker, bring someone in from the group, and whatever the topic is, have that conversation with the team. That doesn't need to be just the motivational speech of YouTube, but it's something about sharing what you maybe went through, what you're doing today, have a conversation with the people that are on the team right now. And that way, maybe you create some kind of like, not just being talked to, but a conversation and maybe mentorship, whatever that comes out of it. I think that's more valuable than having someone up there on stage or so to just give you a motivational speech to run your heart out on the weekend. I think that could be an easy way. We could also connect all the people across the globe.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea to incorporate everyone. And also I think that a lot of the student athletes take their experience for granted while they're here. And I know it's hard not to. You miss it when you're gone. But if that's expressed by you guys, then maybe that will allow some of the student athletes to take some introspection and really appreciate what they have going on here, and then further want to be part of the program after they graduate.
I would agree with that. I came back last season, preseason, during the cross-country preseason training, and I brought my teammate with me for skeleton training. And a majority of them didn't know who I was, but, for the few that did, I think it was nice to see that connection come back. And, the real-world applications, I used literally the combine testing that we did for preseason for skeleton. So I think that connection is really important. If we can actually establish like people are still, have an affinity for the track and field program and want to be engaged and want to be involved, just need a platform how to do that.
Yeah, that definitely is a great insight. And I think like that also takes a little bit of effort from you guys for either calling in or sending a message or willing to talk to an athlete that's struggling. I don't know in what capacity we can kind of structure this, but that does take like a little bit of effort for you guys to talk to us and to kind of let us know who you are, because I'm familiar with most of you guys, or at least heard your name, but a lot of people don't take the time or effort to kind of do a deep dive in our history or connect with people that weren't their age or weren't in their little peer group. So,
Harris, is that something you'd be interested in spearheading from an athlete's point of view?
Sure, absolutely.
I think maybe a good idea would be to start maybe sharing what people are doing, be it alumni or current students, like maybe on that LinkedIn group, just if someone's doing something special, or if it's not special, if they're just like where they're at in their life, or we could do like alumni spotlights or something, or like Q&A sessions. It can be like really informal, but just like keep that connection or get that connection of it going.
Right. You could be like, hey, I'm Joanna. I ran this event. Like,
never ran in my life, and that's okay.
You triple jumps. You ran from one end to the other.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. But yeah.
I'm a triple jumper. This is my job. This is where I'm living, and my favorite meet was X.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really like that.
She threw the javelin, Harris. She didn't know that. Come on, guy.
Well, I guess that's our fault of not being more present.
One of the an example of this engagement has been people getting internships at Siemens. So we're lucky enough for the last couple of years that Frank Werner's been in charge of picking who gets internships at Siemens. So if anybody's had an interest, Quinn's been able to be like, oh, you're a track person, you get an internship. So we've just funneled people in there, and it's been a great opportunity for all our grad students, right? Because they get to go and make $22 an hour, work 20 hours a week, whether they're domestic or international. They get great experience, they get great opportunities. And I think Frank's moving on now, so he's not going to be in charge of that anymore at Siemens, but that's an example of where a connection in our network has been something that we can help people out with, moving forward. So I love the ideas. I love, Johanna, the ideas for like alumni spotlight as far as the alumni group, being able to talk about where people are now and what the possibilities are.
Yeah, actually, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just to piggyback off that and what's happening with Frank, I've been speaking with a number of the adjunct professors in the business program about what was supposed to be this year's trip for the I'm sorry, what's the name of the trip they do every year, the foreign trip they go. Yeah, JBIP, thank you. I didn't get to do JBIP because I came in late, but they were supposed to come to Tokyo. So basically what I had been talking to them about was if we could offer internships at my company in Japan when they come and spend their time in Tokyo and do the Olympics for students that are joining. So if there were any track kids that were doing that, that's something that we could look into.
I think Tommy was doing that, Coach Farrington.
Yeah, I think Tommy's going to go to school for a 5th year just so he can go to do that.
Well, but yeah, I quite like the idea that we use the resources that we have at hand through the alumni group to kind of flesh out whatever the vision for the future of the program is.
Yeah, I do think hopefully the thing that's coming through all of this is that my personal bandwidth, the time that I can allocate to stuff, goes to the day-to-day operations of track and field. You guys are going to have to take a little slice of your bandwidth and kind of make this what you want it to be. I'll facilitate, whether it's, so for example, if we have a golf outing, that means that I front the money to rent the golf facility for the day, and we try to cover our costs. If we do, that's great. If we don't, then who cares? It's more about engagement and connection for you guys. So those are the type of things. So if we're going to have a dinner somewhere, like you guys have just got to come up with the ideas and tell other people about it, and I'll provide the resources to make those things happen. To me, it's an investment on the front end. And as you guys get to the point where you are, at 20 years into your career, and then you want to kind of give back to the program, we've hopefully invested enough in you, from the standpoint of like scholarships, taking you to meets, and then also keeping you engaged as alumni, that we can get to a point where we build all of those things out. But it's, again, I want you to understand, this is not us trying to convince you that giving money to the program is a good idea. This is an opportunity for you guys to engage as a group and continue to be a group and understand that that's going to grow as more and more people graduate every single year. And we've kept the size of the track team right around 70 to 80 kids every year for the last 4 or 5 years. And as we graduate a lot of kids, I think the alumni that I counted the other day were almost 200 some people that have actually gone through the program almost just while I'm here. So I like all that stuff. The next thing on the agenda is called the Hall of Honor. One of the ways that we want to give alumni a reason to come back is by inducting someone or some team every year into a Hall of Honor. We have right at 20 years of actual history. And as we move forward, it would be more important to stay connected with the people from the past. Most of you guys actually were on a team together, with the exception of Alan. Almost all of you have seen each other in some capacity. We kind of want to do something each year, whether it's an end of the year banquet where we also induct an alumni, so that gives a purpose for alumni to come back, be part of it. If we do get to the point where we have a facility at every single track meet, there will be an alumni tent where there's just food and drinks, and you have the ability to show up. Your meal's already prepared. You stay for an hour or two. You watch a little bit of the track, and you go. And Alan can attest that once you have kids, things become infinitely more complex. But we want you to have opportunities to come and spend time with your families, whatever it looks like in the future. So happy to take any thoughts or comments on that.
What's the criteria for the Hall of Honor?
I think it's going to be up to the discretion of, and maybe we'll have a group of alumni that every year you guys nominate somebody in the alumni group. That's the committee of like 3 people go through internally, and they decide who gets into the Hall of Honor that year. Because I think if you go back to the very beginning, right, where we started the program, the quality of the performance was totally different than the quality of the performance during the Simmons era, and then the quality of the performance in the beginning of my period here and in the end now. So, for example, Kyle Higgs was the greatest thrower that we'd ever had because he was the only thrower that we'd ever had at that period of time. I still think that's something that's important to recognize, right? Because the groundwork for where we are now was laid by people who came before, the throwers that we have now. And I think that's important to recognize. So it's not necessarily about recognizing athletic excellence as it is recognizing a piece of our history every single year. There was, for example, a first men's team and a first women's team to win a conference championship, whether that's cross country or outdoor track and field or indoor track and field. If we could incentivize a whole team to come back and be recognized, that would be a great opportunity to reminisce, talk about your experience, and have a period or a weekend where you are being recognized and honored by the kids that are currently on the team, who don't know who you are, who don't know what the experience was like, and don't know what the challenges were. We want to be able to recognize a full gamut, broad spectrum of people, but have a great reason for doing it, each year.
Great.
Any other thoughts, questions on that? Cool. The next part is just, we've got Queens Track and Field's got our own Instagram, we've got our own Facebook, we've got our own Twitter, and we put things out on that on a regular basis, whether it is recognition of what our kids are doing, or announcements that we've signed somebody, or just information for alumni in general about the program. QueensAthletics.com continues to improve what they do. They're getting a little bit more in depth as far as some of the things that they put out. We're trying to not televise, but have a live stream of like cross country meets. And we did the conference track meet when it was at JCSU. That was really, really well done. And then from a networking standpoint as well, tell your friends about the LinkedIn group if they don't know about it. I made it a public group now. It's just easy to search for Queens University of Charlotte alumni, or track and field alumni. So it's just easy to search for that stuff. If you guys have ideas moving forward, please share those. Please email, or actually text in the group if you have an interest in the president, vice president, secretary positions. We're gonna have those same positions in the student athlete group. And we're gonna be asking people that are in that group to fulfill that, so that there's an interplay between the student athlete and the alumni advisory board. So your role as the president would be to run these quarterly meetings. It'd be just like this. It would be far less informational and more have an agenda that you guys determine and that you set. The VP would not really do anything but just be on the call so that they're familiar with the process, so that there's a bridge from one to the other. I do think those terms will be 3 years. It gives you 3 years as a VP to listen and hear what's going on, 3 years as a president to establish an agenda and try to push those things forward. The secretary could be year to year. It's just who's willing or has a desire to be a part of those things. Are there any questions about that before we really conclude things?
I guess from the student athlete side, would you want it to be a freshman or a sophomore so they can live out their term, so to speak?
As far as the president, vice president role, those would be for the student athletes. I think those would be 1 year renewable positions. So it would need to be a sophomore to a senior, 1 year positions for president and vice president. I think if you want to be president, you need to be the vice president beforehand. So we'll start with no experience, and then from there on out, we'll require experience. And we can also have a little bit, but probably I said 2 per class. We can expand that depending upon interest. But if history, tells us anything, it's that people struggle to commit to stuff and do a good job of it. Harris has been on Student Athlete Advisory Council for how many years, Harris?
All 3 years so far.
All 3 years. So we're just looking like that, looking for people that want to be engaged. So again, think about it. If there's any interest in that kind of stuff, pass that along. But again, it would just be running quarterly Zoom meetings, and the president would have a lot of interaction between myself and the rest of the board. So that would be more like you guys would run your own thing, make your own decisions about it. And I'm here to just facilitate and help you guys out. And then I'm also trying to travel to Europe once or twice a year. I want to get, if it works out within my schedule, we can have a dinner every now and then in London or in some place in Germany if you guys are in Germany, or wherever else I end up. But those are opportunities that I want to let you guys know that are out there, definitely.
Yeah, just let us know if you come to London. It would be great.
You have to come to South Africa, Jim.
And Nassau. But Coach V, I just had I'm not sure if I missed a bit because I stepped out for a few minutes, but I just wanted to suggest, well, I had a question first. Would the positions be appointed or elected? And then secondly, I would like to suggest a second vice president position where we would give that to a senior on the track team or a member of the track team. So that person would, in a way, be the liaison between the track team and the alumni board. So, we'd know what the track team would want from us, not just from your perspective, but from the student athlete perspective as well. So I think that way that would forge a lot more communication and things like that as well. I know with my fraternity, we have a second vice president position that we hand over to a collegiate student every year. They're elected for it, and it is an annual renewal. It is an annual election for it. And that way we're just aware of, what our collegiates want from us as an alumni chapter. So I would suggest that.
Yeah, great idea. I think what we'll do is I'll add that as we'll just say whoever the elected president of the student athlete board is will sit also as a second VP.
That's an easy way to do it.
Hey, Avery.
Hey, what's up?
Any other thoughts or questions?
Avery, you're right.
What?
You're right on time.
All in favor of putting Avery as president of the whole group and everything?
What I miss?
You're the president, Avery.
All right, cool. All right, good.
Yeah, and I would say, Kyle, you asked whether they'd be nominated or elected. I think nominated first. You have to accept the nomination, and then we'll confirm the nomination.
Okay.
Through college.
Other questions or thoughts?
I'm kind of curious where everyone's at and what they're up to right now. Like, what are you guys doing for work?
You want to walk through and do introductions?
I'll start. Yeah. So I'm still living in Charlotte. I work for UCS still. So still working with coaches, and athletic directors. So one thing that for me, like the networking thing, when Jim and I were talking about this, there's a thrower, Bryce. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but a couple of years back, he was asking me, he was like, I want to be an athletic director at like one day, like what's the next step? And so we spoke about it. And so obviously there's a couple different ways, but the route that he chose to take is he's graduated and he's coaching at a JUCO college now. And so that was something that I was able to work with him and help him out. But yeah, so turn it over. Anybody else?
I'll just call on people. Ella, tell us what you're doing.
Hi. So I am living at home, still with my parents, just saving money and everything. I did work in Charlotte for a year until I came back, because obviously I was still doing track and everything then. But I work at ADP in sales, so the payroll company. It's okay. It's just a stepping stone while I'm saving money and everything and getting experience and figuring out what I want to kind of do from that, and just trying to save money, really the main thing right now. But still live in Pennsylvania, just outside of Philadelphia. Go Birds. And that's kind of an update.
All right, Danny, you're up.
So I'm in Jacksonville, Florida. I work for CSX, which is a Class 1 railroad. So I'm a marketing analyst. So I analyze clean data, things like that, and then put it in a way that my team can make better business decisions. So Tableau dashboards, whatever reports, things like that.
How long have you been there, Danny? How about that?
I started in July.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically I graduated from Wake with my master's it was like the end of May, and then I competed. I was on the track team there till like the first week of June, so I only had a couple weeks before I had to move down here.
You made it to D1 Nationals, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
All-American, right? Because you made it to the final round?
I guess technically, yeah. So actually tore my UCL a little bit at regionals. So I thought I was only going to take one throw, but I ended up taking all three. So
Did you get Tommy John surgery afterwards, or are you just letting it heal kind of where it's at?
it was a small tear, so I just kind of like let it go, but I'm still having issues. So apparently I have one more year to get that taken care of before I'd have to pay for it on my own. So.
Okay, let's go to Jimmy Maloney.
All right. I actually just moved back to Charlotte in October. I got married a year ago, and my wife had a job here, so I found a job, and I'm working at Daimler Trucks in Fort Mill, South Carolina, in supply chain. And I've been there since I moved in October, so not too long.
Cool. Alan Duggan.
Yeah, let me make sure I'm on mute. No, yeah, so I am Alan. I live here in Charlotte. I was on the inaugural cross-country team back in 2000, so I'm probably much older than everybody here, probably including Jim himself. So I've been here in Charlotte since, so it's been 20 years. In fact, I met my wife on the cross-country team 20 years ago. And we've been together since the second day of preseason. It's been a long time, but I work at Wells Fargo currently. I'm a data domain consultant. I still run, very active in running, and kind of switched gears to triathlon recently. So that's about it.
Anno, you're up.
Sorry, I was just getting the mute button. Yeah, so after Queens, I started my master's degree, finished that, doing my PhD now, and traveling the world doing research. I was in the US for like 4 months last year. Went to Jim's old place, North Dakota. just working on severe weather, climate science, atmospheric science, and I have a teaching position now at university. So yeah, just getting my PhD done and still running, still very active competitively.
Kim, you're up.
So I moved to London, did my master's here, and then started work for a power exchange now, so in sales. So working with the traders, really all the businesses trading power, electricity in the spot market. So if you have assets or you're taking care of assets and you want to trade the electricity across Europe, then you do that hopefully via us. I work with the businesses located in the US, in the UK. Obviously, I have to travel to Scotland, Ireland sometimes. But yeah, that's why I'm still based in London. So it would be great if you could come over at some point. You can. Oh, and I'm not working out anymore. I should, but I just don't have time. Yeah.
Are you still living with Celia?
No, she actually moved back to Switzerland. She's back in Zurich.
Are you still living with
It's just you and I.
what's her name's sister?
Oh no! Oh, what's her name?
Alicia.
Alicia. Oh, I should know that. No, I don't know what happened to her. I think she also moved back to Switzerland. No, I actually live with my boyfriend here, and we got an apartment. And all I can say is it's really overpriced. It's still very expensive. So I hope it's gonna get better after Corona, but I have doubts.
Kyle Higgs, you're up.
Kim, I actually think it's like the whole British and the Commonwealth that's overpriced. So yeah, I'm Kyle. I live back in the Bahamas. I'm from the Bahamas. Currently I work at Credit Suisse as a banking operations specialist in global markets. So that revolves around a whole lot of reconciliations, a whole lot of system checks, trade bookings, trade expirations, things like that. Also onboarding of projects, and yeah, that's pretty much my job. I also work as a volunteer coach in a way at the University of the Bahamas with the throws. I'm just a bit inconsistent there because work is a lot, but yeah, pretty much whenever my kids call me, I just make an effort to be there.
Asia, you're up.
I'm Asia. I am currently coaching track at Shenandoah University. It's in Northern Virginia. Yeah, that's my life.
How long have you been there?
I've been here for almost a year now. I was in Missouri last year.
All right, iPad Junior's up.
All right. I still ran a year of track after college. Gave it one more shot, and then basically now going on my 4th year with Adidas in Europe, taking care of part of our e-commerce business in the UK and the Nordics, so Sweden and Norway, Finland. Yeah, that's basically it. Living in Amsterdam now for the last 3 years, and in probably the not so near future, making the move back to the US at one point. So might be closer again to Charlotte, even if that potentially will be on the West Coast then, more towards Portland. But yeah, that's probably in the near future.
Nate Smith.
I still work at Queens, actually, so I haven't left. I work in the admissions office I'm a data analyst, so I'm supposed to be building reports, but I do a lot of things because I work at Queens. I got married 3 months ago. What month is it right now? I got married in February. Yeah, thank you. I started running when quarantine started, so getting fat, trying to not be fat anymore. So.
Avery Cypress.
Yeah, so I work currently at the school that I graduated from before Queens. So Darlington School in Rome is like the it's like a college prep boarding school. So I work in admissions here. So that's actually why I was late. I had to have a family on campus. So I had to, sorry for coming in a little bit late. But anyways, that's kind of what I do. I just show families campus and kind of get them through the admissions process and stuff like that. And, you know, help with boarding students whenever they're here. Obviously no students anymore, but when they are on campus, kind of help with like the study halls and stuff like that. So I've been here for since July of last year. So
Daisha.
Hi. So I work for CPI Security. So I do retention and sales here. And then I've been coaching. This year was my 4th year. So I coach boys and girls throws for 9th to 12th grade at Providence Day, my old private school here in Charlotte. So that's about it.
Mystique Rowe.
I'm currently on the USA skeleton team. I'm entering my 4th competitive season. I'm trying to make the World Cup team this year. If that happens, then I'll be in a lot of Europe, possibly China. But right now I'm based out of Charlotte, and I moved here back here last April.
Quinn Ryder.
Yeah. After Queens, I was in chemical export for specialty chemicals. And then my company sold their branch office in Japan in 2019, and I moved into the financial tech space. So now I sit on the board of a financial tech company. I do the overseas business, pretty much anything that involves English. And yeah, I plan to be here for the foreseeable future. So I'm based out of Tokyo.
Johanna.
Really boring. I'm in the UK, just stuck around after my master's, like an hour outside of London. Faffed around for a year and a bit, doing several internships and stuff, and I want to do a PhD. Got a bit screwed over by the virus, but probably going back to Germany or Austria now to do it. In sort of ecosystem science, bit of satellite imaging. Yep.
Harris, you want to tell people who you are and what you're doing?
Sure. For those who don't know me, I'm Harris. I'm a rising senior at Queens, so still here. I'm also an EMT in Charlotte, so hopefully I don't meet any of you Charlotte natives on my ambulance. That would be great. Actually, I'm quarantined currently because I worked in the emergency department for about a couple of weeks and had a lot of COVID exposures. Had a negative test, but still doing 14 days in my room. So, but yeah, I'm hopefully going on to med school after Queens, and I do the decathlon.
Okay, cool. Well, unless anybody has any business or want to follow up with anything else, that's all I've got as far as my presentation. We can take nominations in the group chat later on, more informally, and just establish things from that standpoint. So, go ahead.
Suggestion: can we do like a survey, like an anonymous survey form?
Yep, I'll put together a form. I'll put together a nomination form and I'll drop it in the group chat. And then we'll take nominations for, let's say, a week, and then we can just use this group to then vote on that anonymously. Does that sound good?
Can I
Sounds
say
good.
something?
Go ahead, Enno.
So, sorry, I don't want to make this conversation any longer than it's already been. But all of the financial stuff is way above me currently as a still pretty much a student. But I think in Europe and in South Africa, for instance, the athletic community is very small, and I can easily go to our national championships and I can easily communicate with any student, with any high school student, and even within our training group. Our coach is probably the most well-known coach in South Africa. So I think from a alumni standpoint in that regard, is there any way that we can maybe help with the recruitment process, i.e. you want a South African kid and you say, hey, and we've talked about that a little bit. I got in contact with one of the girls you just signed, but I think it's a little more difficult in America. I'm not sure about Germany and all those countries, but I'd be more than willing to drive to a meet, to talk to a kid you're interested in, instead like actually have that personal connection, telling them, hey, Queens is great. So yeah, it's just maybe my way of contributing would be in a way like that instead of financially at this stage of my.
Yeah, and to answer that question, we have maximized our network, which that means you guys, in almost every case where there's been an opportunity for you to interact with a student athlete and maybe tell your story about how much you enjoyed the university, how much you enjoyed the experience, how you can attest to what it's like there. And recruiting has gone really, really well, especially whenever we've had the opportunity for alumni to make those connections. So 100%, Enno, that's one of the ways that you're giving back already, and we appreciate it. I know LaShawn, I think she's going to be perfect. She's going to be a good fit for us this next year. And we continue to kind of draw kids from each one of your areas, wherever you guys are. And that is 100% one of the ways that we maximize our network, Enno.
Yeah, but feel free to explicitly tell me, hey,
absolutely,
this person, contact them, and I'd be happy to do so.
Any other contributions before we take off?
I think just thanks for putting it together. I think it's great to be like kind of getting back together with the group, right? We've been out of touch with a lot of people for half a decade, at least in my case, or in the case of other people here, it's been 5 years. Time flies, and yeah, it's great to kind of get the group back together a little bit.
Thank Jimmy. He's the one that prompted all of this.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks for showing up.
Always knew you were up for it.
Yeah, thanks, Jim.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks,
Yeah,
Jimmy.
thank you.
Thanks,
Talk
everyone.
to you guys later.
All right, until next time.
Cool.
Bye.
See you guys.